All right. So in this lesson, I want to go through how brand archetypes influence consumer perception. So I'm going to have a couple of examples here for you as well. So there is no doubt that by applying personalities or brand personality strategy to a brand, that a stronger connection with the customer can be made. So subconsciously, people can connect the dots and create personal attribute associations with the brand. So the first example I want to give is the Betty Crocker brand. And it's indeed a classic and iconic example of a brand archetype being used in advertising, specifically the caregiver archetype. So using Betty Crocker as the mascot, I know it's the name of the brand as well, but Betty Crocker is being used as a mascot, effectively leveraging the caregiver archetype to establish a trust and a relatable brand identity to the world of home cooking and baking. So Betty herself was never a real person, but rather the brainchild of an advertising campaign that was developed by the Washburn Crosby Company, which was a flour milling company that was started in the late 1800s that eventually became the General Mills Company. So you can see that this concept was even used back in the 1800s to connect women with being able to bake a cake using these Betty Crocker mixes. So let's have a little dive into the caregiver archetype. So we're going to go into this in a lot more detail in the others, but I just want to cover off on the caregiver here because we're talking about Betty Crocker and how the archetype can affect consumer behavior, right? So the caregiver embodies qualities such as nurturing, compassion, and empathy, and it's often associated with taking care of others. So providing comfort and creating a sense of security. So the Betty Crocker brand aligns itself perfectly with the caregiver archetype by presenting itself as the ultimate source of guidance and support in the kitchen, particularly for women in the 50s. This brand was very, very popular back then. And the brand's image is that of a caring and knowledgeable friend who helps people create delicious and comforting meals. So looking at how you can establish trust and reliability, the Betty Crocker brand, which began in the early 20th century, aimed to establish a sense of trust and reliability amongst home cooks. So it provided consumers with recipes, cooking tips, and guidance. And the Betty Crocker persona was presented as an expert who could be relied upon for her dependable advice, reinforcing the caregiver's archetype traits of trustworthiness and guidance, that she was there almost as though she was in the kitchen with you cooking and giving you that care and support. So the emotional connection that it creates, the brand tapped into being associated with a caregiver archetype, using Betty Crocker's recipes that were not just about cooking. They were about creating warmth. They were about creating comfort and a sense of belonging through food. So the brand's message was that anyone with Betty Crocker's help and with her support could prepare meals that would bring joy and satisfaction to their loved ones. She was also she was also depicted as being friendly and a very approachable character. Her image was very carefully crafted to resonate with the average American homemaker. And this reliability was a key aspect of the caregiver archetype. So it made the Betty Crocker brand not only feel like a trusted friend in the kitchen, but also a household name. She didn't have any airs and graces. She was just a regular person. She looked kind. She looked gentle. There was nothing over the top about her. So very, very approachable. Now, the evolution and adaptation. So over the decades, Betty Crocker has evolved and adapted to obviously the changing norms and also the culinary trends. So the brand has consistently maintained the caring element, right? While the guiding role has adjusted to new cooking methods and tastes. And this adaptability has allowed Betty Crocker to remain very relevant and remain a trusted brand across the generations. So the cultural impact that Betty Crocker has become an integral part of culinary culture throughout the world. The brand's influence extends beyond its products, as it is now shaped how generations of families approach home cooking. A great example of this is having the packet mixes. That has changed how people bake cakes and just made it really super simple. So Betty Crocker's iconic red spoon logo and the signature products are instantly recognizable symbols of the brand's endurance and its presence. Betty Crocker is a prime example of how a brand can effectively utilize the caregiver archetype to build a lasting and meaningful connection with its customers. So by positioning itself as the trusted advisor and friend in the kitchen, Betty Crocker has cemented its place in the hearts and the kitchens of generations of home cooks that showcase the enduring power of brand archetype use. And an interesting story relates to how when they first started with their product mix, it was just a matter of adding milk or adding water, I think it is, to the mix, and it would make a cake. But the product wasn't selling very well, and they realized that people were not feeling like they were part of the cooking process. So they changed the recipe, and then you had to add water and eggs. And by adding the eggs, which is part of the cooking process, being hands-on, that caring, nurturing, being part of the process, it actually saved the brand. And so now people add eggs, which is just one little element to make them part of creating this cake, which becomes something that becomes part of the family. So now I have got some examples for you of a couple of the adverts, the Betty Crocker adverts. Now, when you're listening to these, what I would like you to do is take a listen to the language, the tone, the music, the types of things that people are saying, the connectedness that is happening in the adverts as well. So all of these little nuances all become part of what is happening with this brand and how they're infusing the personality in. So there's some old adverts here which are quite fun to watch. But have a think about this and listen to how they're creating that caregiver connection.
Hello? Hi, Sophie. Sleepover, yeah, I'd love to. What now? I can't right now.
It's fine. Go.
Sophie, I'm helping Mum. Can I come over a bit later?
Betty Crocker delicious chocolate fudge brownie mix. Betty Crocker, it's homemade, made easy. And you can also try our cookie mix range.
Making cake was my favourite thing. Mum even let me smash the egg to mix it up and be all gooey. Now I like it most when the cake is done, because then we could open the frosting. I love it. It's the best part of the cake. Now I like the frosting most.
Betty Crocker knows you love frosting, so we give you delicious ready-to-spread frosting with all our super moist cakes, including our cupcakes.